I call you Lizzie?
No, not Lizzie. Um, you've gone too far.
Well, let's
My husband always says, like, if you want to know someone, fight them. And, like, not physically fight them, but watch what happens when you're in a fight with them. Because you will see a lot of their attributes. If they're petty, if they're, like, how they come at you. Do they go for the jugular? Are they fair? Like, things will be revealed.
So I was a roulette player, right? And there was a rule. And the rule was never look at the other table. Because the other table is always rolling the numbers that you're playing until you get there. And once you get there, out of nowhere, here comes a
like
double zero. Because for real, like, that's what I think life is. Life is just, we always at our table, right?
But looking at the other side.
And we're looking at the other table. So then you go do what they say, which is what everybody's doing right now. They're just doing what other people are saying. They're going to that winning table, and then they get there, and out of nowhere, they forget that table can lose too.
Yep.
And now they all lost together. Welcome back, everybody. It's your boy Rico Hundo here at 8 at the Table, and I just want to say thank you to all those that have been supporting, subscribing, sharing, reposting. It's definitely helping us continue to move forward. Now, for today, we got a dope episode with a dope guest, Elizabeth Overstreet.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. So she's a relationship expert, right? Now, go ahead and tell the audience where they can find you, whatever you have going on or coming up. And,
Yeah, so my name is Elizabeth Overstreet. I'm a relationship coach. I focus on helping people have healthy relationships. I feel like we have a lot of discussions around what we don't like, what we don't want. But sometimes then when something good shows up, we don't even know how to see it because we have not been conditioned to know what a healthy relationship looks like. So that's my passion. And if people want to know, more about the work I do, they can go to my website, which is elizabethoverstreet.com.
That's dope. So we were talking and we were chatting, right? And everybody, I think you should know that she's an Aquarius.
You had to out me.
Because Aquariuses are great. Team Aquarius. Are you a January or February?
I'm a January Aquarius, but like right at the very end.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. You got a little bit of the Capricorn in you. It's okay.
No, that's actually would be, if I was at the end, wouldn't I be like Pisces, I think?
No, you said January.
Yeah, January 30th.
Yeah, February is the real Aquarius.
Oh, God. I don't know about that. Okay.
I'm just messing around.
I know.
So today's topic, what we're going to start off with and definitely peel the layers back on, is basically choosing a partner who chooses you. And everything that, I guess, embodies that or, is in depth of that. So what would you say, I guess, what's the best way to look at somebody or best way to read that your relationship is someone choosing you as well as you are choosing them?
So I think like when someone is choosing you and you're choosing them, there's a couple of things that are happening. There is mutual respect. There's communication. I think you can deal with conflict differently. It doesn't mean it's always easier because as you're getting to know someone, I always say like that's the beginning of dating, the discovery phase of getting to know them. But I do think that certain things will be more natural. So if you're not conditioned to like a healthy relationship, you're like, wait, this person's showing up, they're responding to my messages, like they're like asking me how I feel about things. That might feel abnormal if that's not your normal. But when they're choosing you and you're choosing them, that's what it looks like. It feels better. It's not crazy. Because sometimes when I coach people, they're like, this is just crazy. I don't know what this is. And I'm like, when it's crazy, it's crazy. You're not going to be able to figure it out. That's why we say things are crazy. So when it's normal, it's actually a little more chill. And for some people, they're just not used to that.
And, and I could definitely fully align and relate to exactly what you're saying. Let's actually dive into the same question, but what about when you're after the dating phase? Let's say you might have been together for a year now. You guys went through the dating phase. You guys have now entered a serious relationship at some point in time. And now, what is like because it's easy to get comfortable in a relationship, right? And I guess like maybe someone could feel as if someone's not choosing them the same as they once were because the comfort has now set in. What would you say is a good, I guess, like pick me up or a tool that they can use to kind of get that spark again too? make their partner feel like they're being chosen again.
Yeah. So, I mean, this comes down to like the foundation of how you set up your relationship. And Chris Rock jokes about this. When you first dating someone, you're dating a representative because we're all like putting our best foot forward. We're doing the most because we like, I really want to seal this deal. And then I think there comes that period where you get comfortable. Where you're like, oh, I've sealed the deal. And that's when you start to see the layers of that person come to be and you're like, wait, who's this person or what's happening? But I also want to like remind people that like if you think about your friendships, you don't just know your friend, your best friend right away. You learn your friend over time. So like there's a time period that you got to give yourself to get to know someone to see how they react to certain things. You have to see them in different seasons and time will reveal exactly where they are. But as far as making sure you still stay on that path, I think this is the hardest part about relationships. You have to work at it every day incrementally. And most people are inconsistent. And in a relationship, a lot of us desire consistency. So either sometimes you're consistent, they're inconsistent, or they're inconsistent, you're consistent. So you're battling all of those different, facets of it as well.
They say that baseball is the hardest sport, and I never could agree with that
Mm,
playing every sport. But they say that baseball is the hardest sport because it's the only sport where the consistency is the hardest.
mm,
Like if you can go and hit, 30% or 300%, whatever it is
mhm,
at bat, at all the times that you go to bat, it's such a low percentage. But to have that much consistency with that much difficulty makes it one of the hardest sports ever. And I'm like, okay, cool. But when you think about life, it's so hard to be consistent in everything,
mhm.
So I definitely agreed. I always say a great way to, I guess, keep and build your relationships. It's gonna sound bad, but I use this in business and everything in life. Um, Under promise, over deliver.
Ooh, why you got to go in it like that?
Because if I do everything up front, that expectation has been set,
Mm.
right? Now, if I give you little by little in increments, but I'm always constantly delivering more than what you've expected, I'm constantly always in the green.
Okay, so I have something to counter that. I
Okay.
think more so you should go into it like just be you, be authentic. I think what ticks people off if you think about relationships when they fail is like when people have presented a false image, they've gone too over the top to your point, but and they just haven't shown who they are and the person like is in this situation like who is this? What did I sign up for? I think we get so mad when we're with someone and it's not like what we thought it would be. And I think a lot of that comes back to just people being authentic. So just
Yeah.
be you and I think allow the other person to see like how do they react to that, when you're being you. And I think that's where we have to be a little more decisive like, okay, they're not appreciating this, I need to communicate like this is important to me. But you don't want to give them all the answers up front. You kind of want to see how it's going to go, and then you're testing kind of in a way to see how they react. I think we don't give it enough time though.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I like to give myself in doses. I'm a lot to deal with, being me. I
Mom
have to,
shaking her head around here.
yeah, I gotta just sprinkle it. All right, here's a little. All right, you didn't see this coming, but here you go. Sprinkle this
Hmm.
over there. So I have a personal question. So how did you get into becoming a relationship expert?
Yeah, so Robin Roberts has this saying, "Make your mess your ministry." So I was messy, like when it came to relationships. I got married really young, then I was divorced, so I dated as a single parent, and then I always call it like my dark ages of dating. I was dating people I had no business dating, but they all taught me lessons. So I have all this knowledge that I want to impart to other people because I don't want other people to go through what I went through. And now I'm remarried. I'm in a great relationship. And the thing about it is that I just feel like if you can like kind of reflect back, when I reflect back, I knew there was just a lot of blind spots I had. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And the funny thing about it is my parents were married 57 years, my grandparents 60 years, my aunt and uncles 40 plus years. So I came from this family where I was seeing people stay together and be very happy. So I knew it could happen and I thought it would be easier than what it was, but I wasn't approaching it the right way. So I try to like my passion is like I want to see people happy. I want to see people in the right relationship dynamics. I hate when I hear vanilla advice like if you do these one, two, three things, like it's gonna work because I think each couple's different,
Yeah.
each dynamic is different. So that fuels my passion. I just want people to be in a good place when it comes to relationships.
Yeah. So what? Okay. So throughout this, the messy phase. That's what you called it.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. I want the
yeah,
dark age.
yeah,
There we go. The
yeah.
dark age. What was it like? What was I guess what were you attracted to or what were you attracting, right? On both sides of the fence that was, and what also made you think that those were good decisions, or at least temporarily good decisions at that time?
Yeah, I think like when we're first dating, we just don't, a lot of things we're doing, we subconsciously and consciously have observed. So a lot of it comes back to childhood. A lot of it comes back to what you observe with your caregivers or your parents and how they showed up in relationships. So I kind of was looking for my dad in pieces, but then I went through a rebellious period. So I was looking for something opposite of my dad. So I was kind of screwing myself there, but that's another story. But so when I first was dating certain people, I would be like, okay, he's really cool. I like him. I'm attracted to them. We have chemistry, but maybe he was emotionally unavailable. It took me a long time to realize I needed someone who was going to be emotionally mature. Like it took me a minute to figure that out. And there were guys around me that were showing me that, but I couldn't see it because I was looking over that for other qualities. So I learned to really kind of dial into attributes that no matter what happens, if we lose everything, like how is this person? Like what is
Yeah,
their compass to rebuild, or what is their work ethic, or what is their are they humble? Do they have a good sense of humor? Are they compassionate? So I had to go deeper. And I think a lot of times we go very surface. So things that can look good on paper, that's why we'll see couples hook up. We're like, man, they look good on paper, but then it's like it doesn't work because we're looking at these like very shallow things
yeah,
that really can change over time, but that don't tell you like who that person is within
definitely.
themselves.
The paper never has a full description.
Never, ever.
The paper never has a full description. Even teams, they say, "Oh, it looks good on paper," but
Mhm.
then they don't go anywhere.
Well, I think about that the baseball movie where the guy discovered how you could recruit people and you didn't have to have a team of stars. Remember that?
Wow.
And it was more about the teamwork, and it was more about like, okay, how did they balance each other out? And then I was watching the documentary on the football player that man, he had the drug issues. I can't think of his name, and he was really talented out of oh he out of Texas, Texas
Okay.
A&M.
Was a college player?
He was a college player, but he went pro for a minute. I cannot think of his name, but he was dynamic player. But what I was thinking about as I was watching that documentary and thinking about the baseball story is that, yep, Brad Pitt does the Money Pit, so that's the one. But then when I was watching this football player, and I cannot think of his name because he has significant like drug issues and things like that, was that you can't do it alone. So even though he was dynamic and he was getting it done, it wasn't sustainable.
Yep.
The most powerful teams we see even now that are successful, they know how to play their part,
They have.
right?
Yep. Yep.
So I think I think that's a good example of just like I'm trying to think of what my thought there was, but just how you need the partnership, the teamwork,
Yeah.
in any dynamic like that.
Definitely. I mean, I agree. Now, still want to stay on the same topic
Yeah,
because
go for it. Huh? No, it's what's that guy's name? It'll come to me at the end. He
what
just had
was
his documentary just came out actually.
so I want to learn you.
Oh boy, I want to learn you, Rico. I came to learn you.
Okay, we get there because no, I'm what I've learned to do is become a master sorter,
What does
right?
that mean?
So I can sort people and sort their behaviors, and then it's like I look at people as a Tetris game,
Mm.
right? Or not that Tetris game, but that game where you have to like move the blocks to like make an alleyway for something. And I'm like, all right, okay, well, let's move this here, let's move this here, let's move. Okay, this is who you are. Let's go that lane. So now my question is, because I got some really dope. We got some really dope information from you, right?
Mhm.
Um, so there were some, there were some qualities or behaviors or habits that you were looking for that might have resembled your father, right?
Yeah.
What are those, I guess, core values that he held that you felt were or feel are, very
Yeah.
sacred?
So my dad has passed away. So
Rest in peace.
yes, thank you. But he just had great like work ethic. He did what he said he was going to do. He was consistent. Like if you ever had crisis, he was there for you, and he had that relationship with other people within the community too. So like when my dad and my mom passed, they had like over 2,000 people that attended their funeral. So they just like that giving spirit, just that ability, that wisdom. Like he didn't always tell me the answer, but he made me a critical thinker. He made me kind of like figure. He'd be like, "Okay, what do you think?" And like, "Why don't you research it and let's talk about it?" So I think when I was looking at men, I was always attracted to someone who intellectually stimulated me. So I was like, "That's my dad." And then I was like, "Oh, can they be consistent?" That was harder to find. And then I was like, okay, can they like protect me and can they create a secure environment? Not that I need them to do everything, but is there going to be a balance there? So those were things that kept coming up recurring with who I was looking at.
So what were the qualities that you were kind of um like falling for that overshadowed those traits?
I think like what looks good on paper. And then also I would say
Like
like
a physical attraction?
physical attraction, just like the image. Also, I think, I'm trying to think back on it's sometimes chemistry. Like, I think sex messes people up a little bit because it feels good in the moment, but it can give you a false sense of security because it's sending things to your brain. Like, sex can be just as addictive as drugs. So, the same things that are being hit, your dopamine receptors, the oxytocin releases that you're getting from this person can mislead you, which is why you see a lot of people who come in strong and then they get together and they're like, ooh, like there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on because it's
Yeah.
almost like they're blinded to it. So I just think you have to you have to keep that in mind. Like the sex could feel like sometimes like physical attraction and chemistry can be a red flag because people can come in so hard on that angle and then they can manipulate well there, but then when you really get to know them, you're so deep in, you're like, wait, who is this?
You're actually like, where am I?
Right, right, right. What is
Where did
going
I just
on?
go to?
But it's confusing because as humans, we do want to be attracted to the person. We do want to have you do want to have a good chemistry with them physically. So I think it's a balance, though, of like sometimes delaying that gratification to get to know the person because it's more clear when you don't sleep with someone. It's clear. It's like you're like, it's easier
I
for people to
really
walk
don't like
away.
you.
Right. It's clear. It's clear when you don't sleep with someone, you're like, nope, this is not it. But when you sleep with someone, you're kind of like, well, I kind of feel a little fuzzy. I mean, maybe we could work through this.
It's like it's funny because it's almost like you're damned if you get it, you're damned if you don't, right?
Right.
Because if you get somebody that you truly, truly like, but they ain't knocking your boots off, you might just be like, I don't need to listen to you, or I don't need to even be around you or deal with this, right? When you get into those frustrated moments. But then on the flip end side, that person who is, doing his due diligence inside the bedroom, it could kind of eliminate whatever issue that y'all might have had. Like just
True.
just one session. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if it's fuzzy or if it's healing. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I know you are. I know you are, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Sounds like you had a personal experience with this, but go ahead.
I mean,
Or two.
because they say that like what's it? There was I forgot what comedian guy said this, but he had did a stand up and basically said like he was homeless, so he had no choice but to have good sex. Right.
What?
And that always supplied a roof over his head. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
All right, so like everybody gets fed up to a point, right? Like
Hmm.
when you get fed up with your results, that's what's really like your transitional period, right? When you might have experienced the same exact result that you didn't like 10 times, and that 10th time you're like, I am done, right? It's usually sometimes it's even more than the other nine,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's just the icing on the cake. So I'm saying all that because what was your fed up moment? If
Ooh.
you in your dark ages?
So I'm gonna tell you what happened, and this is, I have to credit somebody for this. One of my friends. So I was at this point, like I had everything. I was successful. I'd done well, with my daughter, raising her, and I was like, I went on this trip to Jamaica. I was sitting in this five-star beautiful resort, and I was by myself. And not that you can't go on a vacation and have fun by yourself, because that ended up being one of the most interesting vacations of my life.
I know
Because people
Stella.
kind of took me in and like took care of me, but not like in the way you're thinking. Because it wasn't a Stella moment or anything
I'm
like
just
that.
messing
I know.
around.
But no, I remember calling my friend and being like, "Thank you for," because my friend owned the timeshare or whatever, and I was talking to him. I'm like, "Thank you for the like, letting me have this experience." I said, "It's beautiful here, but I just feel so sad." And I started telling him like, I said, "I just wish I could share this with someone because I didn't realize I was like in the honeymoon part of Jamaica. I think it was in Montego Bay or something. So like everybody was just getting married or, together." And he was like, "You do it to yourself." Huh? It's on you. You have opportunities, but you're not picking the right people. And that person had never said anything critical of my dating or anything before. But I just started kind of really thinking about it and kind of doing an inventory. And that's a part of like what I coach a lot. It was on me. Sometimes when you're in a bad situation, it's on you because like there's a quote, you're 50% of the problem, 100% of the solution. You can always remove yourself from a solution. And that's when I realized, I said, you know what? I'm picking people like I know aren't totally emotional available, but they may have these other criteria, or I know that they really can't give me what I need. Why am I afraid of getting what I want? And it's like when I changed that and I just started approaching it differently, my life, it changed dramatically, because I just became more aware. And I think a lot of us walk around kind of in an unconscious state
Mhm.
about our relationships. We just go with the flow, and, but we know in our heart, we're like, something, this ain't totally what I want. And so it was just that moment that I said, you know what? Yeah, I made it. I've done all this stuff, but I want to share it with someone.
Yeah. I realized that like people have grown accustomed to not having their desires, right? So like since a kid, most people don't get or don't have what they want in life at all, and most people, especially as kids, are told no. So like they don't even really, um, I guess, would be conscious enough or woke enough to even say, okay, cool, I am the determining factor of my solution,
Mhm.
because we're so used to living without our solution,
Yeah.
So I think that that's a great moment for you. Um,
And can I add something? I
yeah.
think people are conditioned, even in relationships, to not know what good looks like.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is I've had conversations with people where they're like, I'm not supposed to hit somebody when we're fighting. Like, but if they don't hit me, then that means they're not passionate about this relationship. I'm like, no, 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 that's not how it goes.
Wow.
Right. Or there's people out there that didn't have a father figure or a mother figure, and they still desire it so hard. So they kind of keep getting into situations because maybe their parent went through something, they had a drug issue or drinking issue or whatever, and they end up in these codependent relationships and they don't know anything differently because this is what they've lived. It's been their norm. So, dysfunctional can become functional, to your
Yep.
point, without people it really being their fault per se. But I do think that once you do know and you have a sense like, okay, this is not working for me, this is not making my life easier, that's when you have to wake up and become a little more conscious and unnumb to it, right? So
Mhm.
you can change it. So I think some of it's just circumstance, with people.
Yeah, and willingness,
Yeah.
and I think there's always a breakthrough moment. Not always, but for those that have the breakthrough moment, it's always got to be something from, you know, a a really just a lost place. I think like for me, like I had to admit to myself that I was lost for me to understand that I need direction.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to admit that they're lost
That's
because we
true.
all think that we figured it out,
Mhm.
or we all think that we have the solution of a problem that is actually just going to be an ongoing problem, or a growing problem. So I think that when you have that moment, that's when you're like, okay, cool. Well, I am lost because I'm seeing everybody else do this, right? Or I'm seeing everybody else have this, I should say. And I know I have the ability to obtain that, which is how I'm kind of viewing. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. If you're in a place where you're looking at a bunch of couples on their honeymoon,
Mhm.
which also is probably the highlight of their relationship,
Right, right.
right?
It is. It was.
Yeah, it's the highest of, so you're like, well, damn, I want one too. Like, and
And I think at that point, I had been through like so much. We all have our embarrassing moments, like of what we've done in relationships, and for people, and we're like, I will never do that again. But like
yeah,
sometimes you got to go low, you got to go down through that experience to not do that experience again. But I think you're right. I was around, like, they're like, you're here? What are you here for? I'm like, I'm just taking a trip. And it was literally people's honeymoon. I'm like, what are you here for? It's my honeymoon. It's my honeymoon. We're celebrating. I was like, oh, okay. And I think it kind of like, it did. You're right. I was like, I'm getting people's high moment too. I think that
yep.
was part of it. Yeah.
So, question, right?
Hmm.
Being that you've been through the dark stages, or
My dating dark
your
ages.
dating dark ages, I should say, your DDA, right?
I like it. It has an acronym now. It's growing.
Yeah. You have an experience of actually going through the rock bottom and coming out on top, and a lot of people may not be able to communicate that,
Mhm.
and really help people navigate through that. So when you're with your clients and whomever friends, how do you feel, or how do you go about, I guess, talking to them about knowing where they're heading, with whatever behaviors that they're displaying?
I think like I'm really grateful for my experiences. It was not fun to go through those experiences, but I think it makes me highly empathetic. But also I can sense and read things pretty quickly with people. So with my clients, for me as a relationship expert, it is hard because I can see them hitting the wall over and over and over again. And people don't always come. I want to be honest about it. People don't always come through it very quickly. It takes time. But I had actually a couple of messages over the last couple of days from clients where they're like, I really thought about what you said, and like this is changing my life. It was worth it for me to go down and like be introspective and figure out my stuff, own my accountability in the relationship. But it doesn't happen overnight. So I don't want to sell it like, hey, now you're aware of your, relationship blind spots, you're going to be all, a-okay. I think it's a process. So when I'm talking to people, it's me reminding them, of what good could look like, of why they want to be invested in it. Warren Buffett always says the like top two decisions you make in your life, one of them is who you choose as your partner, because it affects you physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, financially. So a lot of times we're spending so much heartache in situations we just don't need to be in. They just don't make sense. We know we need to get out of it, but we just feel like I can't, or I feel dumb that I have to talk to you about this because I know it's dumb that I'm dealing with this maybe, you know, and it's not dumb because it's human, and we're as humans we have emotions and it's complicated. So it's funny. I do have clients that, like, I had a coaching session a couple weeks ago, and my client said to me, "What year was it that I said that this relationship wasn't right for me?" And I was like, "It was on this date," because I remind people it was on this date at this time that we talked about this, and this is what you said. Now, what's changed? And they said, "Yeah, I always knew," but it didn't. That person didn't get out that relationship right away. It took them years
Yeah.
to get out. Yeah, it takes people time because you're changing a behavior. And so first it's like I feel like you're taking people through steps. First you have to make people aware or more conscious of it. Then people will have to like think about it and process it. Then they have to kind of experience it again. Some people quicker than others, but it
Yeah.
just takes time to change those things.
So what about, I want to kind of bring this full circle with today's topic, right?
Yeah.
So what about when you have a person who is choosing you just as much as you were choosing them, but they're still the wrong person for you?
Tell me more. Like, what does that look like? So you both are mutually interested, but how do you know they're the wrong person for you?
Well, because like maybe they just have like habits or behaviors that are not actually like benefiting you or could be detrimental to you, but that person still shows up for you, day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're like, for example, let's say there's the bad guy, and a good girl likes the bad guy. Usually, like those bad guys are very loving,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they love that girl, they treat her with respect, but his habits outside of that house
Are not good.
are not good.
Yeah.
Right? So he's still showing up and he's choosing her, which is making her probably saying, okay, well, he's here for me. And although he may be, he's also doing things that could technically put them in harm's way or just put them in a bad situation. Um, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how would we, or how would you communicate to somebody that, hey, listen, I know this person does love you. He demonstrates or she demonstrates um, their love to you, and they display all the different things that you're asking for, but that they're just not a good person outside of you.
Yeah. I think we can have sometimes blind loyalty in relationships. So like it's kind of like, but that person was there. They were there. And that could,
Yeah.
and if we really are about the loyalty, that could weigh in pretty heavily. But I think in that situation, I would say, okay, let's do an inventory of like what you want in a relationship, what you need. Let's talk about what a healthy relationship looks like, and then let's talk about what your relationship looks like. And I would compare with what's important. If they have children, it's even more important because I don't think we think about this a lot, but we have love legacy. Like my parents left me a love legacy. My grandparents, I saw them going through it and pushing through it and staying the course, right? And staying committed to each other. Learn, they have disagreements, but they would show us like how to talk things out and then let it go, or to regroup and talk about it. I would also impress on that person, like, what legacy do you want for your children? Because your children are always watching and observing. So a lot of the cycles that we see that are dysfunctional in families is because it just keeps going from generation to generation, right?
So it's a love legacy that's been passed down that is dysfunctional in a sense. Wow, that's dope. I actually saw Jordan Peterson. I'm gonna paraphrase what he said, but he actually said something very similar. He said that um, parents fighting an argument is borderline essential,
Yeah,
realistically,
it is. Yeah.
because especially like when you have kids,
Mm-hmm.
because they need to understand that a fight or an argument, not a fist fight, but like
Right.
a
Right.
debate or
Constructive argument.
yeah,
Yeah, I
constructive
feel that.
argument should
Healthy
not
friction.
exactly
Mhm.
should not be like you have to be able to process it, handle it, and deal with it, and realistically problem solve that because it's almost inevitable,
Yeah.
throughout your life, no matter if it's with your loved one or whether it's with your partner or coworker. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely do think that that's great.
I think it's super important. I've worked with people where they never saw their parents argue. And
Yeah.
so guess what their mechanism was? They would disappear or they would just not argue. They would just go away. They didn't know how to have that conversation. And they didn't realize it until we really talked about it. Like I never saw my parents have any healthy friction or have a disagreement. So I really didn't know how to weather that. And the way they watched their parents deal with it was, one of the parents would like leave or
Wow.
avoid. So I think that's something that is, important for people to learn that there is going to be healthy friction. You can model it in a good way for your kids so that when your kids have things they don't agree with someone on, you're actually teaching them good skills of dealing with conflict as well.
hmm and listen, I'm a big advocate for adversity.
Hmm.
I think adversity is essential for anything great.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could add healthy friction to adversity.
Hmm. Hmm.
We can add, even non-healthy friction to adversity. But it's realistically like how you deal with it and how you assess it afterwards is what really, determines where you go after that. And like I have kids in my house. There's two kids in my house. There's a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old. And me and my girl, we might argue sometimes, right? But we always get to a point where we're like, okay, like if we had an argument, let's just say we had an argument that was bad,
Hmm.
right? We'd be like, okay, now that we've gotten to this point where we come to terms to resolve whatever issue that we had, let's explain this to the kids,
Right.
right? And so, like, I'll sit down. Kason is my son's name, so I'll sit him down. My daughter doesn't really fully understand yet; she's 2, but like, we'll sit him down and we'll actually break down to him what happened and what transpired. That is digestible for his age, of course.
Mhm.
Just so he can understand that, like, listen, parents do fight, parents do argue, whatnot, but as long as it's nothing that's overly
Yeah.
disrespectful, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely
Yeah.
boundaries. But I think that we get into this point where we want everything to be perfect.
Yeah, there's no perfect relationship. I know people get really like confused by social media, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, this picture, I see these pictures of this thing." But I always say that's one snapshot in that person's relationship, and it's probably their best snapshot. What you're not
Yeah.
seeing is the fight that may have happened before the picture or after the picture, or how the kids did this that created this
Yeah.
dynamic of conflict. So I really feel like it set us up for like this false sense of what happens in relationships. I think relationships are full of like imperfections because we're imperfect as humans. So, and
Yeah.
happiness is so fleeting. Like it's an emotion. It's up and down. Like every day, even within ourselves, we may feel really great one day, but not so great the next day. So we measure our relationships that way. We're kind of doomed because it's two people with two emotions, right, that go different ways.
Yeah.
I think there's periods of relationships where people like are in good place. I think there's times where you're just fighting with your partner. It's just like you're agitated, and I think there's parts where it's very bored. You're bored. Like it's just normal. It's nothing really exciting happening. I think all of that's the normal part of a relationship.
Mhm. So okay, let's get into it, right? So they do. I probably even said it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but this is before I had a kid, so I was giving advice without actually being
You
there.
were doing it without having the
Yeah,
experience. Imagine that.
yeah, exactly. Like, come on. Maybe I didn't. Who knows? But there are people who say, never stay together for a kid. That's like the
Mhm.
new thing.
Mhm.
That's like it's looked down upon, it's shunned upon if you are staying together for the kid or for the kids in general. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the couple, and what they want for their children. And, I think it also depends on like how I don't know, like what are you deeming is the reason you shouldn't be together? So I think we're very quick to be like, I'm not happy. I want out. You get on my
Yeah.
nerves. You chew too loud. Whatever that thing is. But it's like, is it really something that you can deal with? Because the reality in relationships is you're never going to be 100% satisfied. I think we need to take 100% out the picture. I think you need to look at it like grades. If you're like 80% satisfied, that's a B. You're doing pretty good
Yeah.
because everyone's going to always have something. So when we're thinking about staying together for the kids, I think there are benefits in kids. I mean, I'm just going to be real, having both parents present.
Yeah.
It's just it helps them. I mean, there's things a mom gives their child, and there's things a dad gives a child. And I know there's a lot of women who have raised kids successfully. I've been a single mom, so before you yell at me, I've been a single parent, and my daughter's very successful. But I do still recognize, like coming from a 2-parent home, that there were things that she missed by not having 2 parents in the house.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be realistic to that. And it's harder. Like when I was a single parent, it's all on one person, and you're trying to carry multiple roles, and it's kind of impossible. Something's gonna falter just because you're just one person. So I think there's a lot of value to having 2 parents in the home. But I think yes, if it's a situation where it's detrimental to your children, no, you don't stay together for the kids. Is it a situation where you can maybe talk to a therapist or a relationship coach about it and see if it's things you guys can work through? Because sometimes you need another
Mhm.
mediator or a third party to help you navigate through things. I think that's the downfall of a lot of relationships too. People try to do it alone, but if you think of anything in life, like when we go to like get a promotion, we go get a mentor, right? Or we go do
Yeah.
all this research, or we're gonna go run a marathon. We don't just go and say on marathon day, I'm gonna run 26.2 miles. Nope, you go find a running group probably, or you find a running partner. You go get the right shoes. You do your research. You start practicing. But when it comes to relationships, we give up so easily, and it takes effort. It requires effort, and that effort is over time. And I watched that with my parents and my grandparents. They weren't always like in la la, like happy land. They had hard moments, but they were like, we're in this together. We're gonna stick through it, and that was beneficial for my siblings and I to see that process.
And I think I would argue that a lot of couples that were together for, let's just say, 20 to 50
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
um, that had kids, I would argue the kids saved their relationship.
Oh, there's some of that because your kids always bring you back together.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
I think that we we've gotten to this point in reality where it's just like I don't care about anything but me.
Yes.
And it get like to a point where it says I'm not staying together for my own child is crazy to me
Yeah.
because it's like my happiness has to be above my child's,
Hmm.
like, development and growth, and my happiness has to be above, this household. Now, I do agree there should not be certain extremes that should be tolerated, but you do need to exhaust all
I think, yeah,
options.
you don't take, I think like marriage is not just a legal agreement, it's actually a spiritual covenant. That's why sometimes people, like, you feel like you can't get rid of your ex when you're married because it's like you are like really bonded to this person. And I think when you are thinking about, okay, do we stay together or not, you really have to think about your children and how that's going to affect them. And there's things sometimes you don't learn. Like my daughter, there's things I learned later that she had a hard time with the divorce. She understood it. I think kids will understand, like, because they're going to love you, you're their parents, but there's certain things that it can create, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to have some effects. So I just think people need to be realistic about that. But that being said, I just talked about gray divorce. So like a lot of baby boomers are getting divorced. They have the highest percentage. They're like 43% are getting divorced.
Wait, baby boomers are what age
Yeah.
group?
So that's like about 45, I think what, 50 or okay, so the people who are born between 1965 1980, but these are people like their early 50s to their mid 60s.
Okay.
So they've been married, some of these people 20, 30 years. You see it with Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, right? We saw it with also Jeff Bezos, right?
Yeah.
Him and his wife got divorced. He looks really happy with Laura, so shout out to them. But bottom but bottom line is that people, I think the pandemic like shifted people a little bit because I think they were sitting around and people were fighting about masks and like you're in this political party and you're in this, and they had been together for years and kind of overlooked these things. And I think it amplified.
Yeah.
And then as a result of it, it's like they're like, you know what? I can't deal with this one more day. And then you had the fragility of life. People die, so people are like, I just want to live my life out. So you're seeing a lot of that happening, which is interesting to me because like once you've been in it 20, 30, 40 years, I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
I would just think you just hang in there, but
But I just think life is just a circle.
yeah,
Every single facet of life is just a circle. So right now we had somebody at some point who was just, the black sheep to say, I don't have to deal with this. I'm
hmm,
out. And then that triggered
that became the
everybody
norm.
else. Yeah.
Right, right.
Now it's gonna be the same thing. On the flip side, I'm like, you know what? I don't have to deal with this, but this is bigger than me.
Hmm.
And then now you're gonna watch a lot of people then flock to that way.
Well,
So
you know what I think?
it's just
I
like a
always
seesaw.
joke you can either go through life with like one or two people or whatever you want your body count to be. We won't go there tonight. Or you can go you can go through a bunch of people and have similar experiences. So it's like you're either going to go through it with one person, which is what we see in
Yeah.
those long-term relationships. I bet you the people we talk to who've been together forever, they can tell you like you'll tell them you're going through a hardship and they'll laugh at you like, yeah, I went through that 20 years ago. Like because you're having the same experiences either with the same person or different people. And then sometimes what you see what we talked about when it's not the right partner is where you're having experiences where it's like it's a pattern. You see it kinda, but you're kind of ignoring it until it just smacks you in the face in some weird way. And you're like, oh, okay, I think I need to break that pattern. Well, I feel like the people you're talking about that stay together are now divorcing, all right? Because
Yeah.
the boomers are
Yeah.
like, well, it's not because it was the boomers. I think it was a Gen X. It, yeah, great divorce, silver splitters. Yeah,
Gray divorce.
because it's like you're older. Yeah,
Silver splitters.
yeah, but it's starting in
Why
the
am I getting
50s.
divorced at 70? That doesn't even make
Yeah, you gotta look. People are living longer. I might have a good 30 years. They're like,
What's his name? Rihanna.
oh, I thought of the
No,
guy I
no.
was thinking about, Johnny Manziel.
Oh, I didn't. Wow, you know.
Sorry, it just came to me.
Yeah, Johnny Man's. So the funny thing is, I know what you're talking about, but I didn't click it.
Yeah,
I actually started just to do research. I was like, he's still doing things.
yeah, he's playing like league, like international. Yeah, he had drugs and
He
drinking.
was on drugs and drinking. Really? He was like a whole like Christian guy.
But you know he okay, go ahead. Well, cuz so what I was reading about and like researching with the great divorce is that the thing that people get ticked off about in that is like number one, they could have less resources because you may have had one person that was a breadwinner, the one that wasn't. So you have less time to make it up. But I'm getting to your legacy. But the other part is legacy. Like people get mad because they're like, who's going to carry the legacy? Because now once that family's broken, is different versus like when I guess that couple's together
Well,
is what I was reading. But yeah.
who do you think will be more inclined to want to push forward for a love legacy?
You mean like female or male?
Yeah.
I don't like to generalize. I think it depends on the person. Like, there was a thing about Lionel Messi. He was a very famous soccer
Can I call
player.
you Lizzie?
No,
well,
Lizzie. Um, you want too far.
I want to ask this a question again.
But Lionel Messi, he's married to his like childhood sweetheart. He's been with her since he was a child, and like he like totally everything he did with soccer was because he wanted to please her. That's the other thing about men. Like if they make something, no, like if it's about something bigger and you're part of that bigger, they're in, and he's still with that woman. And they say when he takes pictures with women, he will not touch them. He never wants his wife to feel like anything's happening. I mean, he's an anomaly because I don't think
I'm about to
most
say
guys
he's like, and
he's
honestly,
a super soccer star.
and
Everybody wants him. Yeah.
because I listen, he probably got. Yeah, I'm about to say he probably got caught up, and now he's chilling.
I don't know. That could just be like see. That's the thing. You can't generalize. He could be that guy that's like, I just want to be with my childhood sweetheart, and that's it. She's built with me. I've known her when I didn't have anything. We built this together. That could be his fantasy. It could exist.
Can I really?
I know, guys.
Can
I
you
know,
look
guys.
me?
I know what
I
you're gonna
want you
say.
to just look me in my eyes and say that again. Because I don't. You are a very smart individual.
I am, and I know men too. Trust me, because I know I have brothers, so I know things.
Yeah.
But like I just feel like there is that guy sometimes is like it was a guy actually that I could have married like that. He's the same consistent dude. He was like, hey, we get married, you could do whatever you want. But I just was like, oh,
What do you mean? Do whatever you want.
he's like, well, during the time I was dating him, like we were in this, similar religion and like he was like, whatever you want to be, you could be. And he's like, what do you want to be? I'm like, I want to be a lawyer. And he's like, I'll support that. And he's like, I just didn't know he had certain ambitions because some people are so quiet. But looking at him now, I'm like, oh my God, we did have a lot that we had in common because my mother really wanted me to marry this guy badly. I'm like, everything he likes to do is things I like to do because sometimes you don't have the wisdom to
Is
see
he
it.
married now?
Yeah, he's married now. But his mom jokes, but I'm married now too. But his mom jokes, well, his wife is sickly. I'm like, that's horrible. Yeah.
Is he the one that got away?
No, I don't feel like he got away, but I feel like it's a lesson and like that's that grass is greener. I'm like, would it have been different because he actually was compatible with a lot of the things that I'm interested in.
Nah, I don't believe it.
You don't believe it?
Nah, because the thing is, it's like I think that again, adversity does help you shape up,
Yeah.
right? And it will correct you, or you'll just be a
I
victim
think I'm
to it.
better in my relationship because of the stuff I went through. Because I
Exactly.
appreciate what I have. And I think sometimes you have to go through situations where you don't have it or you take it for granted or it's bad or detrimental for you. For when you see something good, you can actually appreciate that thing that's good.
Do you
I
think
think it's
that
real.
do you think that your friend is or your ex is like, what would you rate his happiness scale from
My
the outside
ex-husband.
looking in? What would you rate his
He's a very optimistic guy. So in general, but
Oh, he's an Aries.
he's an Aries. He's a happy guy, but he has shared like he's like I was young, I was making bad decisions. Like
Yeah,
he
yeah.
came back and apologized. It took many years. Aries, it takes a long time.
But
Yeah,
it's
I know.
okay.
We work into it.
It's all about accountability
It
here.
is. It is. He was more accountable than Derek Jackson. Nope, he didn't blame me.
Damn.
Yep.
What is what is or are the biggest challenge or challenges that you realize that people are having to obtain a successful relationship?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that come to mind, but I think like people struggle with like how to communicate what they want and advocate for their needs. And I talk about women a lot, and this not saying men don't have a voice, but I think in society, men is you can have your voice, you can say whatever, and people are like, yeah, I think I agree with that. You're not judged as harshly for that, but I think women are kind of sometimes shut down from communicating their needs, so they go into like a survival mode in their relationships. And that's why you see then on the divorce side, they're saying like a lot of women are leaving because they're carrying all these different roles: mom, caregiver, sister, daughter, entrepreneur, all these roles. And they're in these relationships where they don't feel sometimes emotionally supported. So I would say like finding your voice from the women's perspective and advocating for your needs in a way, because some people are just uncomfortable. In the past, maybe they grew up in families where when someone advocated for their needs, they were shut down. Or maybe when they advocated for their needs, no one heard them. So it's like they have to get back to this point as an adult, like, how do I advocate and say what I want and hold the person accountable? And then I think the other thing is how people fight. Like conflict resolution is like if you get with someone, I always tell people when you guys can fight and like not tear each other apart, that's a huge indicator of relationship success. But people struggle with conflict.
What?
Yeah, they struggle with it because people fight different ways. For some people, when they fight, if things get elevated, they're afraid they're going to say stuff they can't take back. They're afraid it could escalate because, again, they could have experiences they're bringing into it. So they may avoid, they may disappear. And you're like, why are they disappearing? I need them to talk to me about this, which makes that person more like ramped up and more like, why are you pulling away? So I think like understanding. That's why I said take that time to discover someone. In a year, you don't know someone. You think you do, but you really don't. I mean, it takes time, but time will reveal like who they are. But just thinking about the conflict piece, like you need to know, like, hey, when you get upset about something, how do you typically handle that? Like, what feels comfortable to you? I think like being curious and asking these questions, or in the early phases of dating someone, I think that can help you have a better, success with the conflict. But I think that's a big thing. Well, my husband always says, like, if you want to know someone, fight them. And, like, not physically fight them, but watch what happens when you're in a fight with them. Because you will see a lot of their attributes. If they're petty, if they're, like, how they come at you, do they go for the jugular? Are they fair? Like, things will be revealed. So I feel like when you are having a disagreement with someone, can someone, like, step away and say, you know what? You see things differently. I respect that. Can they even hear it? Because some people can't. As soon as you start having a disagreement, some people are so defensive. Like they just shut down or they can't
I fight to.
carry it. Yeah, yeah.
It depends on
Did y'all
how
hear
mad
about
I.
Mary J. Blige's husband? He came for stuff and he had no kids or anything with her.
Nah, he had to though because the whole movement is crazy right now. So he had to stand up. He had to fight back. He
Oh,
had to fight
brother.
back for us.
The He Too movement.
Yeah, it's a he too.
No, but yeah.
So I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Don't fight me, cause I fight to kill.
Oh.
So
Let's dig deeper into that.
I will fight to kill, and that's why I don't fight because I
But why
know
do you
how.
feel like you fight to kill?
Because I'm not gonna fight anybody unless I deem you as an enemy. So I will go into the 10th power of trying to talk this out.
This is a little Aquarius, you guys.
When I go to
Quiet
the
with it.
when I go to the 10th power to talk this out and you still didn't take all other, different avenues, it's like, okay, so you really want the smoke. You want the smoke? Here's the smoke.
So you go extreme, huh?
I mean, it depends on what deem
You
extreme.
said to the 10th. I mean, that's pretty extreme.
It's pretty extreme. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
ain't gonna lie, it's pretty extreme. But my thing is because I don't, I do very, very well at communicating, right? I'm not, you don't have to guess. I will tell you exactly what it is. And I'm actually too good at communicating because nobody even knows how to accept communication, right? So
No one?
not nobody, but
I'm just asking to
you get what
follow
I mean?
up.
I'm talking about no one in my life. So like when I start speaking about things, it's like, okay, it can come off as harsh, but I've learned over the years my delivery could make
Oh,
something.
I like that you said that. So you had some self-awareness
Oh yeah, a
that
lot.
I'm a good communicator, but I may need to temper the way I communicate, even though I'm a good communicator. That's good
Yeah.
awareness.
Well, that's why that's how I became a great communicator,
Okay.
right? Because before it was like you don't have to guess, I would just speak,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know that most people are never given the truth as raw as it is in their life.
But okay, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
So when there's conflict, I think sometimes there could be two dynamics happening in a relationship. One person is like, they're gonna come in, they want to solve the problem. Let's talk about it. Let's get through it. I'm communicating what I need. Okay, we're good. Then the other person's like, I'm not ready for it, or I need to process it. I need to like reflect on it. Can we table this for a minute? And that could feel uncomfortable for a person that's used to like solving through it. So I think you can have different dynamics that create what you think you're having good communication, but you have to understand your partner. So I had to learn this because I'm the person that's like, come on, let's talk about it. I want to solve through it. My husband, he's more like a processor. And so sometimes he would come back to me later and be like, yeah, I heard what you said about this and I want to try to do this differently. And I would think sometimes he wasn't listening because in that moment of us having the disagreement, he wasn't telling me information, or he would be like, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
But I had to learn, like, oh, you know what? He needs time to process it. I don't need to give him 20 issues at once. I need to focus on like one issue. I need to tell him how I feel in a better way. I was very direct like you, so I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm like, I need to talk about the emotional effect and how this is going to help our relationship as a whole more so. Because when you come at it like I'm in it to win it, or if you come in it like, my way is the right way,
No, it's not.
it just it
It's
doesn't
not.
end well.
But I think that communication, when you're communicating with a partner, you need to be able to speak clearly about whatever it is that you're feeling,
Absolutely.
and also provide some type of solution,
Yes.
right? I think a lot of people will come
But
in.
sometimes, can I challenge that a little bit? So sometimes it depends. Like, and you know this, you have kids. So I learned this too. Like my teenager, like she would say to me, like, I would say, yeah, what you should do this, and this. She'd tell me her problem, and I'd be like, okay, let's figure this out. And then one day she said, I just want you to listen. I don't need you to solve through this. And so each time I would talk to her after that, I would be like, is this you venting? Do you want us to problem solve through this? So I think it's not just communicating and giving a solution, but like really communicating and saying like, okay, what do you need in this moment? Because sometimes the person doesn't want, they may know the answer, but they just may want to talk it through with you.
No. I understand what you're saying. I'm not speaking in that context.
Okay.
I'm speaking from a me to them, not a them to me.
Okay.
Right? So, because communicating and listening, I guess listening is a form of communication. But in this exact, I guess example, there has to be a doer and there has to be a receiver.
Don't you think like too, like listening is not just like listening, it's actually like an action. So it's like sometimes we may think like, how you're in that moment with someone and you're ticked off and you just bleh, you just because it's been building in you, and then that person bleh, back to you, and it's like you're trying to clean up this whole mess, but you can't like really clean it up. So sometimes in communication it is one way. It is you just listening to someone without always going to a solution. But I'm not saying you can't or you shouldn't have a solution, but it just depends on your audience.
But like my thing is this, I'm not a build up person. You're never gonna get something built up out of me. Because the only way it gets built up is if it's been repeated. I'm not that type of person. You can bump me and then, I just hold it in, and then you bump me 17 more times and then you get all 18 of those bumps.
Yeah,
I've never been
you
that
let things
person.
out immediately. It
Yeah,
sounds like
yeah, because
in the
I don't have
moment
the I don't have the capacity to
to
hold
hold
on
all
to
that
little
in,
things, right?
which is healthy. But some people they don't have the capacity on the other side to always like give to say, hey, I feel this way. Like
Oh
it may
yeah,
take
yeah,
them
yeah.
a like insurmountable amount of courage to be like, man, you really hurt my feelings the other day when you did this, this, and this, and you can hear them their voice shaking or the nervousness. So all I'm saying is you have to give consideration to both parties.
Yeah, of course, but that's not the solution. Here's the solution, right?
And he will be talking to me later about this.
Here's the solution. Well, like for me, and like what I had to learn to do was I will write things down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't, first and foremost, where I'm going in my life and everything that I've acquired and accomplished in my life, I don't have time to deviate off of this road to be upset about something that I find minuscule. But at the same time, I can't afford for this minuscule thing to
To
persist
build up,
and
yeah.
build up, right? So I will write something down, and the way that I will approach it is like, depends on the person. I've never really had a toxic relationship. I've never had a relationship where I fought all the time.
Mm.
Besides really one, and that was because Instagram was new. You know what I'm saying? We were 21, 22 years old. Instagram is new, and I want to show my abs, and she's like, "Why do you want to show your abs?" We're like kids. That doesn't even really count. But like outside of that, I don't. All right, whatever, it counts.
It's part of your relationship history.
All right, so we'll chalk that one up. It's my car
Right.
facts. Yeah,
Sure, one accident.
yeah, that's my one accident, and it wasn't even my fault. I wasn't at fault. But outside of that, because I don't do well, like I know, like again, growing up how I grew up, it was nothing but toxic. So
Mm.
I'm an analyzer and I'm patient when it comes to, you know, fixing a problem because I know I look at problems like knots, right? And there's like you think it's just one string, but there's a reason why this whole thing exists.
Mhm.
So when you actually look at it as a knot, you start to peel it out little by little, and then you can actually untangle it so it could be flush. So that's how I always looked at it. So I'm patient with the problem. But now when the person is not being receptive, which at times it was my fault because of my delivery, right? Because I'd be like, to me, it's simple, but to them, it's like a Rubik's Cube.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized that those people and I are just not the same level, and we just need to
I mean, there's
separate.
that too, and
But
that's well. I mean, there's that too. Like, I like that you said, you are like you want to lean in, you want to communicate because you have awareness that what you saw maybe growing up, you don't want to repeat that. It sounds like you've consciously made that decision. But some people grow up in situations and that's all they know. So when you're
yeah,
getting someone, you're getting all of their history, all of their cargo, all of their baggage. Get it? Relationship, you on the ship
yeah,
together, and you're like, so the way you might deal with it, it might be very healthy, way of like, hey, let's talk about it. But you could be with someone else. I'm just saying, be aware that you're like, why are they shutting down? And there could be a reason. And I think it's important to like explore that, like how
you
people
have an
deal with things.
index finger. All right, repeat after. I mean, do this. Let's practice this exercise.
This don't sound good.
Raise your index finger of either hand, and then raise the middle finger of the same hand. That's what you get. Do it again.
So you're saying the two?
Deuces.
Deuces.
That's what I don't have time for that no anymore. Like,
Look, you can. I mean, this is the thing. That's the beauty to me. That's the beauty of dating. That people are in such a rush. Like, I got to get with this person. I got to find this person. Dating is a beautiful thing. There's
yeah,
no commitment in the early phases until you guys decide to have commitment. So you really truly are discovering this person, and this is a great time to just sit back and observe. Don't give all the answers to the test away. Like, how do they communicate? How do they deal with conflict? Now, if you decide, okay, you know what, maybe there's just gaps because of things they experience, but I really like this person. Okay, jump in and say, hey, let's talk about this. But just sit back because people will always show you and tell you who they are.
yeah. But some of them will do it 5 years later.
Some people are good, but people I don't think can play that game more than a year, honestly.
You don't think so?
No.
Yo, I know.
I think there's always signs. When I talk to people who break up with people or who divorce people, they always can go back to the moment where they were like, I felt something in my gut at this point, but I ignored it. I think it's us. Sometimes we just push it away, but we know. And then it kind of keeps recurring. And we're like, yeah, I know this isn't the right thing, but you just keep going down that road into something so toxic happens. You're like, I can't ignore this anymore.
That's your breaking point. Your fed up moment.
Yep. Yes.
There is a woman who went online to say that women who move to areas, rich areas such as Dubai, looking for men that have money, are not emotionally intimate, and they won't be. They're just stimulated on financial stability. So when a man with money wants love from a woman who's just craving financial stability, he's never going to get that emotional intimacy that he's feeling for.
Mm,
So like you're having a imbalance of people just living together,
yeah.
and they're just living to cover.
And then once you're with someone, and we don't talk about that
Yeah.
like this, there's an exchange of energy.
Yep.
Like, so sometimes people are like, why do I feel crazy? Because you're dealing with crazy. So that crazy's in you too, because you're having sex with this person,
Yeah.
you're intimate with them. Because you're right. My friend lives in Miami. He said it's like a competition there of women trying to get these guys with money. And it's just like a game. And they're constantly gaming these guys. And it is sad because these guys I think what happens with guys is guys are so physically drawn to women that it becomes like a blinder for them. So they overlook things and they don't see things until they're deep in that relationship or have children with that person.
But I don't think.
Ooh.
I think
Yeah.
so.
But guys need to go deeper.
No.
Guys, don't you think? I mean, I feel like guys need to go deeper, even though, because I'll hear guys say this all the time. It drives me crazy. That's my preference.
No,
Well-
I'm not talking about that.
Wait, who's
part.
the-
Let's
wait, what?
just say that.
The
let's
physical
say
part.
I'm a guy.
Uh.
I'm
The
single,
looks.
and I'm joining.
Well, I think what's happening is that I think, in my opinion, when you have this imbalance of just people and their own desires and really just realistically the ignorance of their own needs, right? You have this guy who will want a beautiful woman, but we are physical seeing
Get
creatures
that.
first,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But there's two sides to this coin. This woman knows what she needs to do to get to this man who has this X amount of money. So she needs what representative she needs to play, right? So when you're playing a game, you're still gaming somebody.
Mhm.
You're still leading them astray. You're still going to lead them to emptiness. And you're going to give them a false reality of this filled void that's only going to grow bigger and probably end up on a podcast hating women. And then we
Talking
get
about someone we know.
then we get mad at the guy, but the guy didn't break his heart.
But this is the thing I
You
would.
know what I'm saying?
This
He
is the
didn't break
thing
his heart.
I would argue. So there's like 5 dimensions that I talk about: physical maturity, emotional maturity, sexual maturity, financial, and spiritual. So if a guy is just like, oh, she's beautiful, and he stops there, he hasn't physically matured. He's still living in the body of an 18-year-old or 20-something-year-old, because it's like we all know as you are in a relationship with someone, you're going to get older. Things can happen. Right, beauty fades. And I always say to people, can you love this person right where they are, but like who they are? So they always say men marry hoping the woman doesn't change, women marry hoping the man does change. But the reality is like you're just looking at one component. Now a mature man is like, okay, she's beautiful, but what's her backstory? They're gonna go deeper. So I don't think it's just on the woman that's like beautiful to showing up and she's like breaking this guy's heart. I think it's on the man too to develop in other areas so he doesn't keep having that experience.
I think it goes. And
I mean,
here's the thing.
we have plenty of examples of guys we see and hear, and they get the baddest chicks, and they still leave those chicks. So it's like, so they looked at that one component. They had kids, and they were like, and they saw other things, but they're like, well, maybe she won't be.
No,
this
you
way.
we gotta stop. First of all, we're not gonna downplay a woman's ability.
No,
That's
we're
what-
not. We're not downplaying a woman's ability. What I'm saying.
Hear me
I know
out.
where you're going with this.
Hear me out. So then let me
Go
let
on.
me finish.
I
Let
have
me
a feeling, but
finish.
go ahead.
So like the thing is, and this is just my opinion,
Mhm.
right? There are women, and I say this all the time, right? A woman who have slept with a lot of men or been with a lot of men can please a man more sooner and faster than a woman who is inexperienced with men. The same way a player, a guy who is a player, he's been with a lot of women, can please a woman and know a woman and get a woman to do what he wants her to do more sooner than a guy who doesn't have that experience.
And I would say when you meet that person, you better run.
But the thing
Or
is,
pause before you sleep. You pause because this is the thing. We're going back to the dimensions. That's limited. That's limited sexual maturity. That's limited physical maturity. Because you're saying to me pretty much like, dang, she could please me. Okay, game over.
no, I'm
I'm
not.
gonna surrender. Well, people do it every day, right? I'm gonna surrender everything to this person, and then your life turns into a mess, and you're like, why is my life a mess? Because you haven't matured enough to say, okay, she's good, but like, let me slow this down for a minute and let me look at the other dynamics of this person. But I agree with you. Yes, there are people that have the ability to
Don't
connect.
try to align with me right now.
I'm aligning with
No,
you because
because
I
you didn't
understand
even
where
let
you're
me
coming from.
finish what I was
Okay,
saying.
go ahead and finish.
Because you went left.
Okay, go ahead. Go
The-
back.
the-
Take me right.
Right. So now what happens is when you have the ability, right,
Mhm.
to know somebody, you can feed them every single aspect spiritually.
I
You can
disagree with
feed
that.
Listen,
But keep
game is
going.
game. You can feed them because if I know how to please a woman and I know what women like, I know what women crave, right? And if some women, you got to know how to do more than one thing. Some women they might just like you just because you're a cool guy and you might just look or dress nice and smell good. Some women gonna say, "Hey, I need you to, please my mind." So you know what he does? He brings out a couple books that he's been studying, and that he can actually align with you intellectually and now physically. So now he's at 2 out of your 5, right?
Mhm.
And don't let him have a spiritual background because if he knows a lot about religion and or spirituality in itself, he can literally stimulate a woman in those 3 phases. And most women and most men too, because a woman can do the same to a man. When you have that ability to be able to be versatile amongst those areas, those are the ones that are realistically the heartbreakers. The
Mhm.
heartbreakers aren't the one who just got you because she looked good. Because 9 times out of 10, you had 5 other dudes that told you that she wasn't for you, right? I'm speaking from a guy to a girl. And 9 times out of 10, the girl had 5 girlfriends that said that guy wasn't for you. So she has to double back and he has to double back and say that y'all were right. The real heartbreakers are when no one saw it coming. The real heartbreakers are when we all
Which is
thought,
why I tell people take your time.
yeah,
See that person in all seasons. Time is a revealer of things. And I hear what you're saying, but like when I talk to my clients who get gat on certain things that you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about, the thing they will say is like, you know what? They can't really like intellectually stimulate me, or I don't feel emotional connection to them. So yeah, they might be good at faking it for a minute. I mean, because there are true players out there. There are people out there. They have game. I mean,
Out
they
here,
do.
Are players too?
you come to a tri-state, it's a
All I'm
crazy
gonna say
world.
both ways. No, I know, I know.
Girls are players too. Exactly. See what I'm
I'm
saying?
from Chicago. I'm not. Yeah,
Yo, yeah.
I get it.
No, but my thing is, all I'm saying is that the game has changed. It has elevated.
Hmm.
And when I say that in a sense where people are now have the ability to realistically come off as if they can cover, almost every single aspect. Now, granted, yeah, you're right. With time will
You
show,
gotta
time
put the
will
time
tell.
in. I think people try to erode the time. I think like
Yeah.
online dating, it's good that you can now meet more people, but it's bad because it's like going to, in the women in the room will understand this. It's like going to the nail shop and you have 100 colors. You're like, I have 100 colors, and even when you choose that one, you're not happy because you're like, maybe I should have chose that other color. And I think online dating is like that, where it's like I have all these options, but really, what people have found out is like it's kind of the same people on other apps, right? On
Hmm.
the so it's not about quantity, it's about quality, and I think to get quality, it takes time.
I
Anything
agree.
you're diligent, like you built up things in your life. I could tell you're a hard worker. It took you
Thanks.
time. It took you time to get there. And I just wish people would put that same time into a relationship because I think they would sometimes see when something's not right. And I think we have like something in our brain. I go back to your intuition and your heart. Your heart is more emotional, of course, but your intuition usually it will be like something is not right, but we just don't lean into that
Yeah.
sometimes. But I do think with time, you start to see things. But a lot of times we're eroding that time because we're like, I just gotta like get with this and figure, we'll figure the rest out later.
And you got like so there was just a I forgot who it said. I forgot which girl said, but she said, "Oh, Glorilla." She went on somewhere and said that women should just play in their 20s, their
Mm.
entire 20s. Yeah, realistically, women should be toxic in their entire 20s. But now here's
Well,
the
I'm here to
problem.
say, don't waste time doing that.
Yeah,
Like that's a
right.
waste of your time and your body and your energy. Like you don't. I feel like why we have enough examples of what doesn't work.
Mm.
And I always joke like Cardi B likes going home and being married to her husband. Now, even though they have stuff going on in their
Yeah.
relationship, she's a former stripper, right? She's a rapper, she's a businesswoman, but she still likes the structure of a relationship. Don't
Yeah.
be fooled. Like Cardi B has access to a lot of people. She could probably have a lot of people. Like she said when she got accused of cheating, she said, it would be out there because I can have who I want. But she still wants that consistent person. That says a lot about, are we desiring things that we think are, things we need versus like when you look at the reality of the situation, when we get that, we're like, oh, I still want this one thing. I always think that's interesting when people are at the top of their game and they're still like, I want to be married. I want to have a family. Like they're still trying to create this unit and they can have access to anything. So
Well, I mean, there's something. Well, we know that, and I say this all the time. One of the three, they say this at like fifth grade level science. One of the three essential needs for every human being is love
mhm.
and or
An
affection.
emotional connection, like that's
Yeah,
what you're talking about. That's why you have the rich guy that's like, okay, I've given her everything. She's here. She's played this game, but you can't fake emotional connection.
yeah.
And they
Yeah.
still want that. I think that's pretty interesting. Like it's a human need.
You know what I'm thinking is going on is that right now it's a free for all for for the youngins. We'll say the youth, right? So you got the women who want to do what they want, all right, and then you got the men who want to just do what they want with the women that want to do what they want. That makes sense, right? Those men aren't establishing any financial stability. They're not establishing any real fundamentals or foundation for their future to lead up, and they're just outside having fun. And I think that like fun is all good until it's when you look back and you realize it was detrimental.
Yeah.
And then that's when we get to the people who are now, and the product of that are looking at things like, I don't have time to really figure you out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a year or two to really invest into you and see you. Even though you might be 28, I've known you since you were 26. I think I've known you for 28 years. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take probably the same amount of time as that person did growing to that 28-year-old for you to actually know that 28-year-old. And really by that time he's 56, right? but
That's true.
but the problem is like we're all not investing time in the right space. I said this before here that dating needs to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot be for fun. And look, I'm a guy who had a lot of fun. You know what I'm saying? I had a lot of fun in my life. I'm not like Wilt, but I had a lot of fun.
And you know Will Chamberlain is
Yeah.
20,000 plus women.
but what I do know
Seriously.
is that like some things that I kind of spoke into existence happened without me even thinking that it would happen. It just happened. But I said it for so often that I wanted to have a kid at 27. I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it happened, I didn't really want it to happen right then and there, but it did. But at the same time, all that being said, even in my relationship with my girl now, who's the mother of my child, we didn't spend enough time together at first, which caused a lot of friction.
On the back end.
Yeah, on the
Well,
back end,
you
because
can
we
think
just had fun.
right. You either can invest on the front end of your
You
relationship or
go
on the back
or pay
end.
for if you rest on the
But
front
you're
end.
still gonna deal with stuff. So it's like, why not just put that stuff up front?
Yeah,
I was reading like people are doing these, of course, engineers came up with this date me docs. So they're doing like these 1,000-word, one-page resume of what I want, what they want in a partner, who I am. But they're being very authentic because they have like online dating fatigue. And what I thought was interesting is like they're desiring someone to connect with them for who they are. And they're putting like details in there like, I'm geographically agnostic. If you live here and I live here, I don't care. Let's connect. Like they're like, I want to have a traditional marriage or I want to have this kind of marriage. Like people are putting it out there. And I'm like, what if we dated, like that? Like it would make it so much easier. What if you were just like, hey,
But it's theory and practice, right?
it's theory and practice, but I mean, what if someone just said, "Look, I can't be serious." What if they were Wilt Chamberlain? They're like, "Look, I slept with a lot of women, and you're not gonna change. It's still gonna be women that are gonna sleep with them because they're gonna be like, I could change them, but okay, that's your decision. You walked into that. But what if people could just be direct and say, like, "Hey, this is what I want." I think it would just change the whole dating landscape because I just think hurt people keep hurting people, and then it creates this cycle. And there's people that start off good.
I think that we got to get out of the, this is who or what I want, and start saying like, this is what I am,
Mm.
and this is who I am, because like what I want will change, and what you want may change,
You're gonna
right?
evolve, yeah.
Yeah. So like, there's people who had monogamous relationships, somewhere down the line become swingers,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. But if I say, hey, I'm a person who is, um, I love road trips. I'm just saying, I love to be out. I love to travel. I love to drive. I love sports. I sit down every single Sunday and watch every single football game. That is not going to change.
Right.
Or you had a guy who said, I love video games. There's some women who hate men that play video games, right?
Mhm.
But like they got it. We have to start being more like, we have to start from the inside and then go out.
Yeah, and you gotta let people be who they are. There's peace in that. There's a saying that a man goes where he finds peace, and I think it's true. Like, and women too. I think we look for peace, but I think the best relationships are people that are just like that's who they are. Like they're not trying to shape them or change them. They know that's what they signed up for. Like I said, I think people get mad when they're in relationships for things they didn't sign up for. Go ahead, you go.
I was gonna say first and foremost, I don't believe men and women coexisted at peace ever in humanity. For real. Like, and I had to
I
literally.
think they did, but I think
There was always
well,
beef.
well,
Like there was
well,
always beef with men
I
and
feel like
women. They're like, and now we think that it's supposed to be just the icing on the cake.
no, I
Nah,
think
we've been battling for
I
power
think like I
forever.
mean I'm a spiritual person. I think God did intend it for it to be peaceful, but I think we kind of messed that up. And I think since then, yes, it's never been right. Because like even thinking about the story with Abraham and Sarah, she was like, "Okay, I know you want this kid. Go ahead and get with this, I'm going to give you a concubine." That did not end well. That was the most like friction situation between her and her husband, that kid. That kid felt it. If you read about, he felt, he knew his dad loved him, but he felt rejected by her. So that was the beginning of people opening, if you think about it from a biblical perspective,
Yeah.
people opening up their relationships, and then it was messy. And we've been in that mess ever since then. I mean, what's different from people swinging or saying, okay, I know this is going to satisfy you for a moment, go do this. But then when it blows up, people are like, uh, I didn't think it would go this far. I think it is biblical. Like I think you're right that the lack of peace is there for things that have happened
They had
spiritually.
there was a study that was done and they said that was, well, because it's about ancient civilizations.
Hmm.
All civilizations that had what is it called? Sexual liberation
Hmm.
failed. Every one of them.
Mm.
They all failed. And if you look at it, every one of those civilizations don't exist today. Right? So now when we have this,
You don't have the family.
yeah, you don't have the
Which is
family.
what's happening. That's what
Mhm.
when you see like all the to me unrest and the difficulties and how people think about things, it's the disconnect of the family unit. A lot of it ties to the family because the family does give you structure. It does give you access to more resources. It like if one falls down, you have the other. It helps you have a support system. But you said something earlier, and it made me think. Like I think a lot of people are married living single, or in relationships trying to live single, and the two can't coexist. You need people to be in a partnership. You can't be on this like island by yourself and be like, okay, I need you for this. That creates an emotional disconnection. And that might be what you're hearing from the guy where he's like, well, I'm giving her stuff, but she's emotionally disconnected. But then he's like really not there for her emotionally. So how can she like show that for him? So there's a lot of that happening today too.
Did you ever go to the casino or do you gamble or have you
I've been
gambled?
in a casino, but I'm not a big gambler.
Have you ever played roulette?
I've seen it, but yeah, I
Okay.
haven't played it.
So I was a roulette player, right?
Mm.
And there was a rule. And the rule was never look at the other table. Because the other table is always rolling the numbers that you're playing until you get there. And once you get there, out of nowhere, here
You
comes
need
a
like a
double
book.
zero.
You need like a book of analogies.
Like, because for real, like that's what I think life is. Life is just we always at our table, right?
But looking at the other
And we're looking at the other
Yeah.
table because at one point our table was rolling our numbers and we were making
Right.
money.
You're like, but maybe this table might be better for me. I might have better luck.
And I done seen 22, 24, 17. I'm like, damn, all my numbers are over here. Then you go to that other
And
table.
you're like, wait, this table's messed up in a way too.
And here comes a 4.
Right.
You're like,
So then you realize you're the problem.
and then but the thing is, and you know what happens? Like, see, people who gamble, they're gonna understand this too. They're gonna really align. The worst part about it is when you're a roulette player and you're watching the other table celebrate
Mm.
because everybody's winning.
Mhm.
Everybody's
You're
yelling.
just catching them in a winning moment.
Exactly, but you know what you want to do? Be a part of
Be a
it.
part of it.
So then you go do what they say,
Mhm.
which is what everybody's doing right now. They're just doing what other people are saying. They're going to that winning table, and then they get there, and out of nowhere, they forget that table can lose too.
Yep.
And now they all lost together,
Mhm.
except for the people who quit early. And that's relationships and gambling 101. But
You're welcome.
thank you, Elizabeth. You were great. One more time, can you tell the audience what you have coming up, where they can
Yeah.
find you?
So I am finishing up my second book. It's called Love Can Be Messy, but You Don't Have to Be. Because like I do think that love is beautiful, but I think it could be messy at times too. So I'm gonna give people some real tips, whether you're single or in a relationship, is ways to like kind of work towards having that healthy relationship. And again, if people want to check me out, they can go to my website at ElizabethOverstreet.com. But I had a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Thank you for definitely coming in here with some great insightful words. Also, question: do you have a release date on your second book?
So I don't yet, but when I do, I'll definitely let you guys know.
Okay, perfect.
Love your opinion on it.
Yeah, I would definitely read it.
Maybe I should have waited to have you be a part of it so we could put the roulette example in there.
Yeah, we're gonna. You know what? Don't worry. Put that in the third one. I got you. But everybody, thank you for liking and subscribing. Keep on keeping on. We need all the support and the love to keep this going. It's been great. We'll see you next time at 8 at the table.